Okay, well, thank you all for coming to this afternoon's session. This session is opportunities to collaborate with UAMS on the development of emerging digital health technologies. The purpose here was to give you a bit of an overview of two different organizations at UAMS. One is the new Institute for Digital Health Innovation, and we have Dr. Sexton, who will give us an overview of the IDHI, and we have Dr. Who will give us some additional information on the Department of Biomedical Informatics at UAMS. Dr. Pryor will be followed by Dr. Powell, who will give you a little more information on informatics workforce development and the needs for the state to train informaticists. So the real purpose of this session was to try to create an ecosystem here in Arkansas that can help you as developers appreciate the opportunities to collaborate with UAMS. If, for example, you're developing an app that has applicability to the healthcare industry and you're looking for a partner to evaluate the clinical validity or to do some field testing, then we would be very interested in exploring that potential with you. Also, we have existing needs. There's clinicians and researchers that have an interest in developing an app or to integrate a wearable device to be able to make use of that data in a clinically meaningful way. And so we're looking for partners in the local developer workforce. Also, there's opportunities for you to pursue additional training and education in biomedical informatics. So that's why I've chosen these speakers to give you a little bit of an introduction to those potential opportunities at UAMS. So without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Sexton.
Thank you, Aaron, for that warm introduction. Thank you all for the reception and the opportunity to be able to speak to you today. My name is Sexton. I'm a trauma surgeon, so I operate on folks that are injured. And in addition to that, I've helped been a part of a software as a service company and help develop medical devices. One thing I cannot overstate is the relationship between clinical and technical and how that has to be a symbiotic relationship for healthy tech to develop and to be successful. And so what we're going to start talking about today with the Institute for Digital Health Innovation, our role is in healthcare analytics. And we're talking about the changing landscape in healthcare. The most people per thousand hospitalized in the U.S. occurred in 1981. So we're talking 30 years ago now. My grandmother said never do math in public, especially among people that are math minded. So we have to change our model. Also, hospitals are closing. We've lost over 1,000 hospitals annually for the last couple of years. So our model and our motto has to be changed. There's some things that we know that improves healthcare. Everyone, all of us, need a local healthcare resource. Does that need to be a doctor? Does that need to be an advanced practice nurse? Does that need to be a pharmacist? What's the best resource allocation? We don't know the correct answer to that. We also don't know the best provider relationship. People, consumers, we want 24/7 access to things. That's what we expect, right? Apps should just work. Technology should be available when we want to access it, not during office hours, which are 9 to 5. And in healthcare, we have a unique problem. The people that consume healthcare aren't the largest payers of healthcare. So we have to deal with a highly regulated, complex environment where the payers' motives may be a little bit different than consumers. So this change is coming. We're going to start moving from a system where the physicians, hospitals, the healthcare organizations get paid to do things. The more stuff we do, the more money we make. In the next decade, we're going to start getting paid for value, which means we will be given a certain amount of resources to care for someone with a particular condition. We're going to have to learn how to risk adjust medical and surgical conditions. We don't do the same things with the same problems every time. These practice patterns can be regional, depending on where someone trained. And I'm sure you all are familiar with the law of diffusion of innovation. In healthcare, it takes on average 15 to 20 years from a groundbreaking clinical discovery that's published in our literature to become an accepted practice. We have to shorten that time. And Dr. Powell will talk about some more options for big data. There's some categories that you can think of when it comes to development. Diagnostics, how do you detect disease? What's the right monitor or sensor? We all have computers in our pockets right now. Where shouldn't we start focusing our research efforts? Where we always struggle with population health is how do you engage the consumer and how do you get buy-in to things that have been shown to improve health. So this is where IDHI believes that digital health is the answer. We want to engage consumers where they are, with the devices that they have, and the resources that are available to them. Something you may not realize in Arkansas is that there's actually a lot of interconnectivity between the healthcare systems. I'm a trauma surgeon. We have different levels of hospitals in the trauma system, 1 through 4. Every one of these hospitals has a T1 line for communication. We have one of the most robust image transportation systems of any trauma system in the U.S. And if you come to UAMS, we are the largest decile for mortality of any institution in the country when it comes to being intervention targeted. Okay, so we do some things well. We don't tell a lot of people that we do or that those resources are here. The E-Link program, a big part of the Institute for Digital Health and Innovation, is a way that we interconnect with these facilities. And in our state, we have one major medical institution to engage with for research activities. Here are some of the things that we can do with E-Link. A lot of them are video visits. But don't think of it as another way to improve a video visit or telehealth. Think of it as a way to access a platform for data transmission. And what would you do with these resources? Also, when it comes to wearables, it seems like there's a new one every day or so in the market. Okay. Which one is best or which one will win may not be the right question. What may be the best question is, which one's best for this patient? And how do you help them select the appropriate wearable or monitor for the condition that they have? And then how do we improve the health of our Kansans? So our chancellor has just announced an initiative for a statewide integrated health system called UAMS Health. Hopefully be a platform of shared resources, new sites of care, and other things listed on this slide. This also means that we are engaging folks to help develop technology that's beyond our capability and expertise. I know how to do surgery. I don't expect any developer to know how to do surgery. If you do your job well, we can both communicate and ask insightful questions and get to a solution that can benefit our patients. When it comes to being connected, we have been in many different arrangements where we can do co-development opportunities, grant opportunities, and so I encourage you to reach out to me if there's any idea that you find interesting, or that you say, I need a healthcare resource to filter this idea and tell me if it makes sense or not. We have worked with companies on grants. We have also done in-kind development, where if you don't have the resources, and we do have in-house development resources, we'll do that for equity or other things. So UAMS's landscape is changing when it comes to business development and digital health. And I think we'll take questions at the end. But now I'm going to introduce Dr. Fred Pryor, who's the Chair of the Department of Biomedical Informatics and a renowned expert in imaging.
Yes, thanks, Captain, and good afternoon. I'm going to walk around because I just got So I'm sort of like, I feel like a little bit like a sandwich, right? I'm the computer geek between the two doctors. Like as Kevin mentioned, he spent a time in startups. I spent about half my career in industry, a lot of it in Silicon Valley. So we're both very interested in this idea of how do we commercialize things? How do we get things out of the laboratory and into the real world? So what I'm going to do is talk to you a bit about the kind of things that a biomedical informaticist does. This is a relatively new term. The simple way of thinking about it is it's a combination of MDs and PhDs from engineering and computer science working together to solve medical problems and biomedical research problems. So what I'm going to do is give you some idea of the kind of things we do and why we exist. This is a great starting point. It's a starting point for most everything. It's the DNA sequence. Because of the Human Genome Project, which basically was the mark of the new millennium, figuring out the basic structure of the human genome, we moved from a realm of little data into the realm of big data because these produce huge amounts of data. Imagine this is a computer program. It's millions or trillions of lines of code, but encoded in a strange way with these little base pairs, TCs, Gs, and As, and how they go together. So figuring that out is a major undertaking. That was for humans. But most of the population of this planet isn't human. It's microbial, viruses, bacteria, yeast, etc. There are, by volume and by number of species, many orders of magnitude more microbial life forms on this planet than human life forms. And so understanding their genomes is tremendously important, not only if you're just because we're interested in how genomics works, but this is largely a major contributor to the basis of health and disease. And this is just these are ways of looking at it, graph metrics that look at the 100,000 different E. coli, one genus and species of one bacteria. There are hundreds of thousands of different genomes. So obviously, figuring all that out is an interesting challenge, and I'm gonna lead this up to what is our #1 research tool. This is some work that's been happening at UAMS, thanks largely to Dr. Russer, I think who spoke yesterday, and his research team. And this is Dr. Wang Sorawat, I can't get his name out right, showing you this funky little device. That's a genome sequencer, a gene sequencer, and it's that big. Now, normally a gene sequencer is, the size of the table over there. And if you've ever been to one of the big sequencing labs, it's basically a warehouse full of robots, slicing and dicing tissues, extracting DNA, and then feeding them into very large machines like that are table size that generate images that are analyzed to produce gene sequences. This little thing, you can, as Tip has done, take it out into the jungle in Thailand and look at the microbiome, I'll explain in a minute what that is, of a baby elephant. And you can do it with your laptop in order to do the sequencing, but of course, that's not the way you do the analysis. So this is another area that I'm interested in, and what I'm trying to do is explain to you the complexity of biology, as my first slide said, and I didn't, because that's really what drives why we exist in biomedical informatics. The huge complexity means that in order to understand it, we have to have large amounts of data. So this is an illustration of your brain. It's made up of cells called neurons. There are about 100 billion neurons in your brain. But those 100 billion neurons build networks, and those networks have on the order of 100 trillion connections. This is a pretty picture, but it's actually real image data. It's developed using a technique called magnetic resonance diffusion tensor imaging. It's a mouthful, but it's a way of measuring with an MRI scanner how easy it is for water to move in 3 dimensions. And it turns out the tracks of these neurons constrict the way the water can move. And so you can actually mathematically calculate that. And so these are fiber tracks in a real human brain that were calculated using diffusion tensor imaging in something called the Human Connectome Project that I happened to be involved in when I was still at Washington University. So this is one of the neat tools that we use, sort of not at the molecular level, but at a much higher level, an organ level, to try to understand how this complex biology works. I mentioned the microbiome. This is sort of a really cool idea that's only happened in the last couple of decades. We realized that, not to be put too fine a point on it, every one of us is sort of a tree of life. We're covered with microbial life. It's on our skin, inside our body, and that microbial life, as you see illustrated here, all these different forms of microbes, actually are part of the way that we interact with the environment around us. They have a tremendous impact on health and disease. Everything from, the microbes in your gut actually have an impact on whether or not you're depressed or not. And what we've just recently discovered is really rather amazing is that certain cancers, certain tumors, have their own microbiome. They have little microbes that are just associated with that tumor, and those microbes seem to play a big role in how that tumor communicates with the other cells in the body, and perhaps how it responds to therapy. So we're beginning to understand the role that these life forms have in how we deal with the world around us. And one of our colleagues, Dr. Roberson, has this is some papers that he published. I think David may have shown some of this work yesterday. The research that he's been doing to figure out how to map the microbiome, in this case in a human, and this interesting figure here just shows you all the interesting places that you can get microbiome examples from. But mathematical tools for figuring out how and where these different microbial populations live and how that relates to health and disease. So, this is a slide I want to get to. All that nice complexity generates huge amounts of data because we have all of these nifty tools like the little gene sequencer that I showed you in a lot, or the MRI imaging system that generates massive amounts of data. But the number one research tool in biomedicine today is a computer. The number one method that we use for doing research is software. So biomedical informatics is actually the application of computer science and data science to biomedical research. Because the way research is done today is so data intensive, we created a discipline in order to deal with that and to figure out new ways of dealing with it. So that's what we're about. Now, as Kevin was talking about, and Tom will talk about a bit more in his talk, all this data has had a big impact on how medicine is practiced. Most physicians see you as a patient, etc., but as a bioinformatician, I see you as this immense collection of data that has to be pulled together and has to be reduced to something that makes sense. A physician, if you hand a physician 5 terabytes of data that describe me, they go, yeah, okay, that's nice, what do I do with this? It has to be reduced to the relatively small, maybe a few tens of bytes of actionable information that the physician can use and trust. Again, that's what we're about, is how do we use analysis and computational techniques to manage all this data, make sure that it's high quality data, because garbage in, garbage out doesn't help anybody in treating your health problems. And how do we reduce it to something that is meaningful and actionable? Now, as I mentioned, I just came back from a conference in Europe, and it was an interesting conference on radiology and cancer imaging. And one of the parts of my talk was there's a lot of concern about artificial intelligence. How does AI, and we hear about it all the time from almost from every direction, how is it going to impact medicine? And so this was just a slide to sort of make everybody a little bit even more paranoid and say, we're all used to talking to our phone, not to talk to another person, just to talk to the phone, to ask the phone to do things for us. or talking to little boxes in our house. My car sends me an email when it needs to be serviced. I expect that the next car I buy won't bother doing that, it'll just drive itself to the service place and be serviced. And that's really the point of this slide, which came from Accenture, that what we're seeing is that AI, which is machine learning based tools and software, is being embedded in just about everything. It just so happened that morning in my talk, the BBC had announced that AI applications had replaced a whole bunch of bankers in one of the big European banks. So I was like, oh no. The radiologists were quite afraid that they were going to be replaced by machine learning, but in fact they're not. These are tools. They're tools that we can use to develop new technologies, but also to develop new ways of doing medicine, to make medicine more accurate, to make medicine cheaper. Doesn't replace the physicians, they're still there. It's new tools for them to do their job more effectively. And so, again, this is for cancer imaging, and what I was explaining was, there are two ways in which this is going to work. The side that I'm on is over here, which is how do we use machine learning and other AI techniques to help us do new research, to find out new mechanisms that underlie cancer, or to develop tools, as this one is showing, that screen for cancer, taking CT scans, having the AI do the screening, and say, absolutely normal, definitely cancer, human expert figure it out because it's too hard. What you do if you have such a screening tool is reduce the workload of that human being by about 80%, as long as they can trust that algorithm. But it also changes, this is today's radiology world. Perhaps it changes it into that, but there's a whole lot more information that's available. And you could actually do this in the VR cave that ULR has today if you wanted to, but the point is to actually pull all that information together. That's the part that's missing. But these are the two big ways in which this kind of research, these kind of tools, software tools, impact both biomedical research and clinical practice. Now, you've heard a lot, and Kevin was just mentioning this, that wearable technology is everywhere. You know, we all have our chosen Fitbit or Apple Watch or whatever. The original version, I borrowed this slide from a colleague that I met in Washington, and his argument, I believe it was from the FDA, his argument was that by next year, 80% of the people on the planet will have a smartphone. Not quite sure that's true, but it's certainly the case that most people on the planet have a smartphone. And given that, we have a tremendous amount of opportunity to develop really advanced medical devices based on that platform that will be low cost and deploy them all over the world to improve health and healthcare. This is a major area of research. I think you may have heard Anita Walden and others from our department talking about it yesterday. It's something that we think is extremely important, not just as a way of gathering information from the products that exist, but developing new products and new algorithms, new analysis techniques. So this is what biomedical informatics really is. It's how do I apply information science to biomedical research and to improving the practice of medicine? It's a team sport. I was talking to someone in the audience right before we started here. I'm a computer scientist by training, computer scientist and biomedical engineer. But I can go to a conference of physicians, in this case radiologists, and I can talk to them effectively. I understand their world well enough that actually they thought I was an MD until I told them I wasn't. And that's the point. We have to be effective, we have to speak the language of the physicians and of the biomedical researchers. We have to understand their problems so that we can contribute to them. We bring the math, the computer science, the data management, data science techniques, but we're useless if we can't understand the problems. So our entire program, and actually Dr. Powell is going to talk quite a bit about this because he's one of the key people who's actually helped to make our program this way. It's designed to make people multilingual. You can understand both languages and apply them effectively. so that you can be part of a team that's actually moving science forward, because the era of the scientist in his ivory tower or her ivory tower dreaming up great thoughts is gone. It's big team science. That's how we move things forward. So we're a team sport, and that's what our program is about. We cover, and I'm sure Tom's going to go into some more detail, but basically we look at this entire continuum. We apply these techniques across the board from that molecular level, starting with genomics that you already saw, through the imaging, through clinical informatics. How do we pull together all that clinical information I showed you? We just started a new program with the College of Public Health, and how do we turn this kind of knowledge into new policies that affect healthcare all over Arkansas, in our case, because we're very focused on that, but Arkansas can be a model for the rest of the planet. So if we can do it here, we can translate it to everywhere else. So that's what we are about. And this is a teaser for Tom. It's the idea that we came into being not only because in academia we see this as a major challenge for the 21st century. It's how science is done in the 21st century with big data. But it's also a major area for new careers. And so that's why we created a graduate program to help train people to be multilingual, to fill in this huge gap that the world has of knowledgeable people to make this, to actually analyze all the data and make these new discoveries. So that's a nice transition slide, and I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Powell, who's going to talk a bit more about how we do our academic program.
So we have like a distance for dimension, distance for lifetime, distance for lifetime. So if I were to say distance for lifetime.
Well, thank you very much for allowing us to come here and present to you today. What I am going to do is switch gears just a teeny bit, which is to go into the workforce and world of the informaticist, because there is a fantastic need for this in the U.S., world, and Arkansas right now. So let me just make sure that we get in low. I represent the clinical informatics area of biomedical informatics. There's a number of specialties, but to go just a step deeper than what Fred did, when we talk about multilingual, there is a biologic aspect to everything that we do in healthcare, right? If you are doing the genomics, there is a microbiologic language that you need to understand to be useful to that field. In medicine, in the clinical world, there is a medical science that you have to be able to speak. And so when we talk about informatics, when we say multilingual, you have to understand data and data analytics. You have to understand how a computer works and what it might offer you, right? I mean, I might not be the person who programs the computer myself, although I can, but I have to understand what a computer programmer can do with a computer that might be applicable to healthcare, to be of use. And then a big part of what we do is act as creator, but also as interpreter, because here is it's just a bizarre thing, and it's been well proven throughout multiple decades. Physicians are actually fairly intelligent individuals that have got a lot of education. Computer scientists like Fred are incredibly intelligent people with a lot of years of education. They cannot speak to each other. They speak a completely different language. And they don't always, there's a lot of computer scientists that will just simply never do well in the biologic realm, and a lot of biologists that will never do well in the computer science realm. And so being able to mediate that language is like being in a room and having someone who speaks Spanish and someone who speaks French and trying to get them to work on a project together. It would be very tough without someone who didn't speak both of those languages to be able to get something done. So that's really what we're talking about here. So really in about 1977, the use of computers in medicine started to increase. And in about 1984, we began using a term called medical informatics, which was really at that point talking about the concept of theoretical and practical information processing of the knowledge that we're collecting. But as you know, for a lot of the history of medicine, we have been a paper-based field. And so we did not have the ability to aggregate data unless you actually dug into multiple charts and put it in a database yourself. In about the 1990s, it began developing as a scientific field with a lot of spurring on of the National Institute of Health, basically saying we really do need physicians to understand what the computer can do so that we can actually start utilizing that technology better and start improving the data that's coming into healthcare and improving the tools that clinicians use. And they began formal education programs in about the 90s for what we call medical informatics at that point. And now what's basically happened is the term biomedical informatics that Fred talks about. It's an interdisciplinary field with a lot of the biological sciences that deal with healthcare having sort of a specialty along with the computational and data aspect. So it's basically, what is your biologic need? When we say clinical, what we're saying is we're taking the data that is necessary to practice and improve care at the point of care in many situations. So here's what I want to relay to you. I'm going to use a couple of terms that I want to make sure you understand. We're going to be talking about the quantitative deficiency in the workforce and qualitative deficiency in the workforce. And this is going to apply, by the way, this is not just healthcare. I think that this data is going to be very interesting to you in the sense that it actually is beginning to transcend healthcare as an issue. So quantitative deficiency is basically we have too few, right? You can have a baseball team that has too few players. They're going to get beaten by another team simply because the positions aren't being filled. Qualitative deficiency is you've got the wrong people or the wrong skill set on there. So you got a full baseball team, even if you have 18 players, but none of them can catch or throw, you're going to also lose the game in that situation. So what we did is we went out and we sort of asked the state, and then correlated it with national data. Do you understand anything about clinical informatics? Do you have a workforce? Is there a need? And basically what we found out is that everybody sort of recognized the name. Every hospital was sort of saying, we understand clinical informatics, and yes, we have some kind of workforce that we call clinical informatics in the state. Problem is there's still a little bit of confusion about what exactly they need to be able to do from a skill set perspective. So they get multiple different titles. They don't always do the same things and don't have the same training. Here's one of the things that we're saying. There's almost no formal education in most of these people that are calling clinical informatics. Less than 1% had any type of formal education that you would say, that would prepare you to be this thing called an informaticist. So, clinical informatics workforce has got some value in Arkansas. There's already people hired and working and being paid to be informaticists, but there's a little bit of confusion in when they do the brand name. It doesn't meld up. And when we look at the national literature, it's the same thing. Lots of programs calling a lot of stuff informatics, but it isn't really unified. So we've got to do a much better job of relaying to the nation what we can do. Get a very concise message of what we are about and what specific skill set we need to have, because I think we're about to get slammed, and you're going to see that. So when we talked to the Arkansas and hospitals and businesses that we reached out to, here's what they told us. They said, right now, we are right now short. This is how many people we would want, and we are short currently. And so this is going to that quantitative deficit. We are currently short in what we have. We expect to hire as much as 50% more of these kind of people in the next decade, knowing that things are moving much more towards computational needs within healthcare. And so if we're already short and can't find, that's basically what they're saying, short and can't find and fill, and if we go up in need, we are going to have a massive workforce shortage in Arkansas. Well, it is actually beginning to turn. I'm going to show you on the next screen. We're seeing this everywhere. We're seeing this nationally and internationally. Arkansas actually tracks really well with the national picture in this way. An interesting thing here too is here's what they want. They want people with clinical and STEM degrees. Everyone's familiar with STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. We have a massive shortage in the United States of STEM. And The employers know it, and they are banging down doors to find people like that. And guess who STEM people are? It's really you STEM. So there's a workforce calling for you. So we're seeing that governmental and international literature will tell you there are shortages of STEM and these fields across the world. What has stimulated a lot of this shortage is this. If most of you haven't been following the healthcare picture, in about 2010, we had a massive uptick, with the HITECH Act, of people installing what we call the electronic health record, which is basically now all of those paper charts that we used to use, now all that data, and really now all the revenue cycle data, all the clinical data, all the laboratory data, all the imaging data are now being stored on a computer and accessed in the system. So you can imagine this giant volume of data. So now at UAMS, for example, there's nothing really stored on paper anymore. It's basically the entirety of the record is now computerized. And so the industry, as it boomed and went from almost non-existent application of technology in the clinical world to blowing it up to where we're almost fully penetrated in physicians' offices in almost every hospital. And again, Arkansas tracks almost identical to the United States. We are tracking right along with the typical United States picture. Here's the problem that we're seeing. When you look at just pure, again, education isn't everything, so I don't want you to come away with that message. But what it does do is it tells you something, right? And so when you look at the clinical informatics world, basically, there were nobody that had a PhD working in clinical informatics in the community. There were a small number of MDs that are mostly functioning as medical information officers, some master's degree students. Most people have only a bachelor's degree. Again, not to be critical, but when you're talking about high data science, there is some need, there is some need of training that typically goes beyond a bachelor's degree to get good at some of those things. When people did have a degree of focus, it almost never was clinical informatics. What's been basically happening is it's almost all converted clinicians. Clinicians with no training in computer or data or anything like that, they're basically saying, we need somebody, you understand at least half the picture, the biologic aspect of what we're trying to do here. So I'll try to teach you the rest, right? And the other, only 14% are STEM, which is taking computer scientists and saying, all right, you would understand the computer, I'll try to get you some understanding of what we're trying to do here so that you can help. And so basically, this has left a problem. Our people are saying, we need help. We are missing key skills for what we needed. And almost all came around analytic thinking and the ability to speak the language of the two sides of the coin that are working with this. So this is this key skill sets that they need, and the skill sets they said were missing, and it was, we don't have people who understand the computer and also have any knowledge of what we're trying to do here as a business or as a service to our community. And we need people who can analytically think. So, and we're seeing that same thing nationally. I don't want to go over these right now, but what you're basically seeing is the concept of the maturity model. People that have been projecting, where is healthcare going? What you're basically seeing is that these represent levels of maturity. And if you see that mature organizations, according to Health Catalyst, is basically personalized medicine, analytics, data. It's all about data as you get to maturity. We're not collecting data in these giant systems just to collect it. We want to be able to use it and make it mean something. HIMSS, if you're familiar with that organization, the highest level of their stage, people who are putting in health information changes, doing data analytics, data at a mature level. And then this is an information quality book, basically saying that this summarized is the mature organization gets mature by being very efficient with data. So this is what I'm basically saying to you. We have been living in this world where we're putting in electronic health records. Let's just call this the time period where we've been putting in electronic health records in the United States. Up to this point, we've had a workforce. We've told you that workforce is a little scattered. It's not the skill set. It's not data savvy. It doesn't have much education within that realm. It's not very much even STEM related. So what's happened is they've been able to get us past this initial stage of just putting in electronic health records. But once in, I'm calling this the maturity line. Remember, what did I say? Everybody said the maturity line was going to be data on that side. We don't have, so we already have shortages over here. We're short workers in a world where they don't even have the right skill set. When we start getting into the world where healthcare is basically saying we've got to get into our data and improve our processes and improve our finances and improve our health and learn something from these things, we simply don't have the workforce to do it. So, workforce, right? Here's an interesting thing that we saw. Is that I thought this was a healthcare thing. But what you're seeing here is I went into wider literature at this point. And this is basically a 2016 view that says knowledge management is the key industry for America. That 16% of America believe that a bachelor's degree is, only 16% of Americans think a bachelor's degree any longer even prepares you for most of the jobs that they're going to be doing. This is one of the scariest things I ever saw. Do you realize that across the United States, every year we pump out only 15% of the majors that leave a college are STEM-based. 85% of people graduating college are non-science, technology, engineering, and math. We are not creating enough of the kind of people that can do the things that you can do in this room. And so most Americans recognize that's important. The Harvard Business Review says STEM and data skills are one of the key shortages across every industry in the United States. And they basically think that approximately half of all new job openings into the future are going to be STEM-related fields. So what that means is the kind of jobs that are opening up into the future that is filled with computers and data, the expectation is going to be you know how to use a computer and data. And if you don't, you're going to miss out on that. And another scary thing, 50 or 60% of the baby boomer generation is due to retire here in the next few years. And they were part of the United States workforce that typically did graduate with STEM-related fields, so they had some fighting chance of doing this. A private study called the Asia Pacific study said there are deficiencies in both the quality and quantity of data science and analytics resources across every industry. Everybody's banging on the door. And in Arkansas, we actually, I don't know if you know this, but the governor actually said, we are depleted of this resource and is going out of its way trying to create people who can do data analytics and data science. So the main thing I want to get across to you is there is a shortage quantitatively of people to do the kind of work that needs to be done in healthcare around data, technology, innovation, the things that Kevin and Fred spoke to you about. And you get down a little bit about the definition and role, and I want you to understand too, there is a huge qualitative deficiency in healthcare informatics right now. There are not enough people who know how to make a computer dance, understand the biologic aspects of what we're doing, and in the way that they can help. So what I am saying is that if you're interested, we have a program at UAMS that teaches this stuff, but the main thing to put in the back of your hat is this is very bright days for people who understand computer science and data analytics. If those skill sets you possess, there is a market across this world that is waiting for you. And so that's primarily what I wanted to say. And we will take any questions that you have.
Question?
Sir?
Yeah. Give Aaron one, and we can use this one. We'll pass it around.
talk a little bit more about the data informatics program at UAMS as to how long it is and what sort of qualifications would you need to be enrolled in it and all that?
So, yeah, as Aaron was just pointing out, there are a number of brochures in the back of the room for more information, but the bottom line is we have 3 different tiers of educational offerings. So we start with a certificate in several of the programs that is a 1-year investment on your part to get an understanding of some aspect of the field. And then we offer traditional master's and PhD programs. The degree is in biomedical informatics, but I showed a slide that was the various focus areas in the discipline of the molecular level or bioinformatics, the clinical area that Tom was just talking about. We also look at clinical research informatics, which really focuses a lot on clinical trials and how to make use of the type of clinical information to be more effective there. Imaging informatics, which is sort of rare. There are a few programs in the country that do that. And then our new joint venture with the College of Public Health and Public Health Informatics, which is only a master's program. So we offer masters and PhDs in all of those. Now, the second part of your question was, what is a skill set? We actually have a very good admissions committee that has the answer to that in great detail, but I'll just sort of give you a hint. For most of this, what we've discovered is it's easier to teach biology to computer scientists than computer science to biologists. I don't want to offend anybody, but that's just the way it works out. And so,
No offense,
so people who come in with a good solid training, STEM training, as Tom was stressing, then we can provide the background. I mean, we live in the background of biomedical research and medicine. So that's the environment that is very enriched at UAMS that we can provide that training. So that's the easiest way to do it. Doesn't mean that we don't have people with advanced degrees in medicine and biology in our program, because they want to get the quantitative skills as well. I'm sorry.
One of the last slides showed HIMSS level 7 or whatever. What level is UAMS?
HIMSS, unless it's changed, it's HIMSS level 6. And so there's a couple of things that HIMSS level 7 requires, and it's around breast milk and things like that. It's very complicated that we just haven't fully implemented to get to that level, but I'm sure that will come.
Our town frame to hit that was the next thing.
What opportunities are for the technologists in the room to learn more about the clinical aspects that you're looking for, like some kind of certifications, some kind of programs, or just training?
So I mentioned the certificate program, which is a 1-year program. There's another way of doing it, and it's particularly if you work for a small company or you run a small company. I've had a lot of experience writing what are called SBIR grants or STTR grants, and I think both these gentlemen have as well, where it's technology transfer. You work together to solve a problem, and the idea that the government has is academia is going to transfer the technology. Frequently goes the other way. But the point is, you collaborate and come up with good solutions that then the company markets. So that's how we move things into the real world. So that's another opportunity that we've been very successful with, working together with small companies. The government's definition is under 250 employees. Now, there is one kind of grant from the National Cancer Institute that you can be General Electric and participate in, but in general, the small business initiated research is good. And so that's another great avenue for collaboration. Other questions?
Just briefly, I wanted to mention, I think Kevin gave his email if you did want to reach out to explore potential for collaborations. with the Institute for Digital Health Innovation. And several of us are on a committee that's helping to evaluate potential vendor relationships. And that's one of the things we're hoping to do, is matching between clinicians that may have a specific need for software development for either an app or for integrating wearables into a clinical data stream. So those clinicians may have needs that local developers could help to service. And so if you're interested in exploring potential collaborative development, reach out to Kevin.
Absolutely, and we have
Thank you, sir. Please reach out anytime. We also have a weekly clinical informatics lab meeting, which talks about entrepreneurial opportunities primarily. Happy to invite you to that and see what we're engaged in, or at least just start the discussion on the types of things that we've done.
And finally, we have also developed some training modules on learntelehealth.org, which is a website affiliated with the Institute for Digital Health Innovation. We recently developed 3 training modules. One, commercialization as a catalyst for digital health innovation. And that really kind of walks you through some of the specifics of why UAMS is looking to partner with small businesses in this area, because that does drive innovation. And we have the other training modules are on clinical validation, so the need for field testing. If you've developed a health-related app and would like to partner with UAMS to do the clinical validation of that app. And then the other module is on, help me out here. Regulatory compliance. This is a really important issue. If you are developing an app that you would like to explore application in the healthcare industry, there are some regulations that you do have to be mindful of, particularly as it relates to privacy and security of the data.
So if I could just add to that, if it goes back to the previous question, if you just want to learn more about biomedical informatics, we have a regular seminar series that brings in speakers from basically all over the world to talk about what's sort of leading edge research or problems in biomedical informatics. And so all of those are recorded. They're all available on our departmental website. So you just Google biomedical informatics at UMS. You can find the previous ones. And the seminars are open to the public. You're welcome to join us. They're always on a Thursday at lunchtime. And you'd be welcome to just sit in and hear what the speakers have to say. But if you don't want to do that, they're all available online, so you can look through them.
And I do encourage you to do that. There's some fascinating lectures in that series.
Did you have an official mechanism for sharing them, or?
No, I don't actually. I think if you were to reach out to Kevin, since you got his email there in front of you.
I'll turn them into BDS and send them to you.
Yeah, we can also put them up on our website too, at the department website. I didn't want to step on anybody's toes, so I didn't want to offer that.
I didn't really have a plan. I am videotaping this session. I did have a plan to upload that to YouTube, so you'll probably be able to find that if you did a search for the title of the session today.
Yeah, and I'm sorry I didn't put my email address on the slides, but the material in the back has email for our department for academic programs, so that'll get to me, or you can just, again, Google us at ums.edu, you'll find all of us there.